we'll move on to presentation number 2. And the person who is making this presentation is Dr. Sudeep PK. Again, he is a faculty of the JSS Medical College. He is an assistant professor of clinical psychology at the Department of Clinical Psychology. He is a Rehabilitation Council of India registered clinical psychologist. Many of you may not know what this RCI registration is. It's a complex process. Not anybody who is just a psychologist can become an RCI recognized and registered psychologist. Sudeep is one such person. He brings, before coming to this job, a very vast field level, real world experience, because he was the clinical psychologist at the district mental health program in Kasaragod. That is a front line. He was a DMH, which is, people who don't know, district mental health program is one of the methods in which the national mental health program is implemented. Sudeep has interest in mental health awareness, psychotherapy, and research. Sudeep is going to talk to us. Now we are going to become more and more specific. He's going to talk to us about identifying and screening mental health conditions. So over to you, Sudeep.
So thank you so much for the warm introduction. So this is so I would be presenting mainly on identifying and screening mental health conditions. So Kishore sir has given a broad outline of what happens during pandemic and how psychological concepts are affected, how persons are affected. But in this session, what we are trying to do is to identify mental health conditions, like what are the different kinds of mental health conditions, what are the different kinds of disorders, and how do we identify them, and why is it very important to identify the signs and symptoms early, or when you could see it, rather than making it or it reaches into a bigger mental health condition. And we will look at some of the common mental health disorders, which are depression. We'll look at the signs and symptoms of it. We'll look at a screening tool that can be used by a general population or health professionals to identify these signs and symptoms, and could screen for some disorders. For anxiety disorders, we would discuss about anxiety disorders. Then we would look at suicide and self-harm, and look at what are the warning signs, what are the caution signs that we could see, and that can help us in giving a helping hand in order to refer to the different mental health professionals. Then we look at substance use disorders. Then we look at sexual dysfunctions, like Kishore sir told about. There are individuals during the pandemic experiencing sexual problems, sexual dysfunctions. And then we look at some of the severe mental health conditions and what are the signs and symptoms of it. So identifying mental health conditions, mental illness or mental health disorders, these are a wide range of mental health conditions. Like sir told, it's a disorder that affects our mood, that is our emotions, our thinking or our cognition, like the way we think, and our behavior, or how we react, or how we present ourselves. So there are two things that has to be kept in mind. There are signs and there are symptoms. Sign is mostly what is visible or what is observable. We could see the person and look at, oh, these are the things that he's doing, or these are the things that are happening, mainly with related to behavior. We could see this. Then there is symptoms, which is felt or expressed. When you ask the person who is going through, when you have a person who shows signs of certain condition, then you could ask, and the person would tell what is felt, or he tells or he expresses that, oh, I'm feeling this way, or this is what is happening to me. I'm not able to I'm feeling sad, or there is some fearfulness, I'm getting easily angry. So all these are symptoms, mostly the person who is affected by certain conditions can express. And the very important thing is, why should we identify? What is the need for it? This is, I'm not talking in specific to pandemic. I'm also talking in larger aspect. This is something that you could do with your family members, for yourself or your neighbors or someone in the community. If you see someone exhibiting these warning signs, you could identify. So learning about symptoms or early warning signs and action, like taking action, can help person going through a mental health condition. And early identification and intervention is one of the foremost important thing to reduce the severity of illness, or to prevent one person from going into a full-blown mental health condition. You could prevent it. You could prevent a lot of things, for example self-harm and suicide. In this case, when you have when you know the warning signs, and you could lend a helping hand. Most of the time people tell that, oh, we didn't know, or we didn't know what to look for. So this is something uh, uh, which is helpful. So we are going to discuss about the various signs and symptoms. So the signs and symptoms, in a broad way, if you look at, this is not specific to any disorder or any mental health condition, but any changes that happen in a person, in oneself or somebody whom in their sleep. So that you could see these changes. These are signs that you could see, that the person is not sleeping properly, or person is awake the whole night. The person has difficulty to sleep, or he wakes up early in the morning and starts doing some activity, and not able to sleep. So changes in sleep pattern and appetite, he's eating more, he's eating more than usual, or he's eating less than usual, or he's not eating at all, he's skipping meals. All these can indicate that the person is going through some kind of distress, could be a sign of mental health condition. Changes in mood, which mainly which you could see. For example, the person is always sad, person is getting irritated easily, person doesn't want to talk, he gets uh, angry easily. All these mood symptoms, which is not usual, which has changed in the past some days, can be sign and symptoms of certain mental health condition. Then there is uh, reactions of uh, anxiety. For example, the person feels increased heartbeat, and he's sweating a lot, and he wants to go to washroom every other time. So every time he's urgent, he has to go to the washroom. So these can be signs of anxiety, and we'll discuss about it in detail. Then the next aspect is being isolated or withdrawn. So the person who is of concern, it doesn't interact like before. He has stopped talking to his friends, like sir had discussed certain uh, cases where there is withdrawn, being inside the room locked up. So being withdrawn, not talking to anyone, not interacting with anyone, not attending probably classes, and stays in one place without isolating himself, could be a sign of mental health condition. Then there is a decline in functioning, mainly when if the person is working, the person might be always absent to work, or he's not meeting his deadlines, or he is having interacting with his higher authorities, he doesn't talk to them. uh, so he's not able to get the work done. So all this, and for example in students, it could be that the individual is not attending classes. So absenteeism is one of the things related to functioning. And the person or the individual does not attend exam, he doesn't score well in exams. So these could be a decline in functioning. That's what we are talking about. And the next important aspect is disturbances in attention, concentration, and uh, disturbances in memory, like usually the person usually forgets, he goes blank, he's not able to pay attention to the task in hand. Earlier he might be watching TV for a long time or reading, but no, now he can't, he's not able to pay attention and concentrate to activities. So these could be signs and symptoms of some of the mental health condition. And then there is illogical thinking or odd thinking. So when the person speaks to you, you're not able to understand what he is meaning, or what is it that he's telling. There is no coherence in his speech, or he tells things uh, that are illogical, where he tells probably that I have a superpower, or somebody's taking my thoughts away, somebody is trying to follow me, somebody is trying to kill me. All these are illogical ways of thinking. Then there is fearfulness, for example, related to talking to people, or fearful about being in the crowd. So these are some things that could be seen in a person with mental health condition. And there is odd or unusual behavior that can be seen. For example, talking to self. The person is murmuring something as if he's talking to someone else, but there is nobody there. Or he might be behavior in the sense, what we could see, he might be repeatedly washing, or he might be making some signs to nowhere. It's like he's doing some actions, or he's doing some repetitive behavior. These are all odd and unusual behavior that we could see. And these are not usual. These are changes that have happened in some duration of time, maybe in the past 1 month or 1 week. So this could indicate that there is some underlying mental health condition. Now we will slowly look to different types of mental health conditions. And one of the common mental health condition that we always talk about and we always hear about recent times, this has been very common, and this has been coming in media, that about depression, since like one of the celebrities started talking about the fight that she had with depression. It's become more common and people have started talking about it. So what is depression? So it's a mental health condition where it affects your emotion, and it affects how you feel and how you think, and also how you act. So these changes have to be there for more than 2 weeks. It can't be just that the person is sad for 1 or 2 days and then he gets all right. So there is some duration that the WHO International Classification of Disorders have identified, that 2 weeks have to be there for the person to tell that person might be depressed. So these symptoms include the person is feeling sad, or feeling low or depressed mood, or irritable. The person might be losing interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed. So this person who was very active, was involved in all the activities, suddenly does not find any interest in it. Or it could be that the person was reading a book every day, but he doesn't know, he no more does that. Or he used to spend time with family and he used to enjoy it, but now he is not able to do that. So change, loss of interest. Okay. This can also be sign of depressive condition. Changes in appetite, like I told you. The other thing that I told you was a broad outlook, but in depression also there is change in appetite, and the person might lose or gain weight. Maybe he eats more or he eats less, and then there is change in weight also. And overall, he has very pessimistic views about oneself, about others, like generally towards the world, and about the future, that nobody is there to help me. The feeling of helplessness is one of the very common thought pattern in people with depression. And how you look at future, like oh, nothing can go well, being very hopeless about the future, that nobody can like nothing good will happen. And especially during these COVID times, and due to the the second wave of pandemic, people would all there would be people with depression who would tell, oh, this will not get better, there is no uh, nothing can get better. and about oneself, that I am good for nothing, I am not worthy enough to be in this world, it's better off that I die, I am of no use. All these ways of thinking can be very common in person with uh, depression. So again, there will be a lot of disturbances in sleep. Sleep is something very disturbances in sleep is very common thing with person with depression. So either he has trouble sleeping, or he sleeps too much, and then there is easily getting fatigued, without doing much. The person feels tiredness, there is there is lack of energy. So this is something that is commonly seen with person with depression. Like I told you already, the feeling of worthless and feeling that I have done something, what is happening to me is because of because of the some sin that I have done in the past. Feeling guilty about it. That, oh, I should have helped, but I couldn't. So you beat yourself too much, and the person has difficulty concentrating, or trying to make decisions. And there is the one of the major things, that in severe conditions of depression, the person might have thoughts about ending life, or thoughts about suicide or death. uh, so these are common symptoms that we could signs and symptoms that you could see. So there are certain things probably that you have to observe. For example, the person is has change in behavior. There might be that the person doesn't do any activity. The person is always sleeping, or not sleeping properly. So these can be the signs and symptoms. Is when you ask the person, like, what is happening, so the person would tell that, I'm worthless, or nothing good is going to happen, or that it's better that I die. All these thoughts could be the symptoms that the person expresses, and can be the indication of depressive condition. So not all the symptoms have to be there for the person to be diagnosed with depression. So we are not interested here in diagnosing, but people with depression doesn't have all these symptoms, and severity doesn't depend on like having all these symptoms. It depends on person to person. For example, some people might have extremely guilt, and the person might have thoughts about dying, and that is enough to understand that the person is going through a depressive phase. So depression. And if you look at the screening tool that can be used for depression is patient health questionnaire. It's easily available online. I can send you also the link for this questionnaire. This is something that you could use to screen, to see, is there any symptoms of depression. So there are 9 items present in patient health questionnaire, talking about interest. It's a 4-point Likert scale, where you measure it as not at all, or several days, more than half the day, and nearly every day. So you have individual scores for each of the items. So you have questions related to interest, you have questions related to feeling depressed or sad, you have questions related to sleep, you have questions related to feeling tired or fatigueness, you have questions related to appetite, questions related to feel how good you feel about oneself, questions related to concentration, questions related to thoughts about dying, or suicidal thoughts. So this is something that you could do for yourself, or you could administer on someone by asking these questions. uh, so the score is from 0 to 27, and I'll just tell the cutoff scores for these things. If the score is below 4, there is nothing to worry about. There is nothing to be concerned about. The score is between 5 to 9, then the person might be going through a mild depressive condition. If the score is between 10 to 14, then the person might be having moderate depressive condition. If the score is between 15 to 19, then it is mild, moderate to severe level of depressive condition. And if the score is above 20, uh, then the person is going through severe depressive condition. So PHQ is a tool that you could use in your in your practice or in your daily life to screen if there is a person who you think might be going through depressive phase, to screen. There's nothing much uh, to do here. You can screen, and that will be helpful in identifying, oh, this person needs help, and I think I should refer to a mental health professional. So the next is anxiety disorders. We all know, we all get anxious. There are situations where we get anxious. So it's a normal reaction to a stressful situation. So anxiety is not always bad. It's helpful in alerting us to a danger situation and preparing to how we deal with that situation. Uh, but anxiety disorders, when we tell that the person has anxiety disorder, that means that the person have excessive fear, and it is not uh, proportionate to the situation. It is the proportion of fear is too much, and it is difficult for the person to handle, and it affects his functioning. So some of the symptoms that you could that are there in anxiety disorders is increased heartbeat. The person starts having racing heartbeat, the heart pounds, the person might sweat, person might feel the hands are cold, uh, and always having worry that something would happen, something bad would happen. And person might also have difficulty in controlling bowel movements, so he goes to washrooms now and then. For example, a person with social anxiety, uh, who has to talk in front of a crowd, or talk in front of a group of people, might start thinking that everybody would be judging me. So social anxiety is a part of anxiety disorders, and there will be giddiness, there will be difficulty breathing. uh, so these are the things that you could see in a person with anxiety disorders. So you could see that the person is on the edge of the seat, is always fidgeting his hands. So these are signs of anxiety. But if you ask the person what is happening, the person would tell that my heart is beating more, and I feel dizzy, I feel that everybody would judge me. These are the thought patterns that you would get with persons with anxiety disorders. So let's look at some of the anxiety disorders that are commonly seen. The first one is generalized anxiety disorder. In generalized anxiety disorder, there is persistent and excessive worry. Like every time the person is worrying always about, which is so much that the person is not able to do daily activities. The person always feels restless. He keeps feeling on the edge, as if something is going to happen. The person might feel tension in the muscles and has difficulty sleeping. So it could be seen as, like, for example, if the person's son has gone out to college, and this person always starts thinking about, oh, what will happen to him, when will he come back, will he come back fine, is there something that will happen to him. All this worry is the common pattern in persons with generalized anxiety disorders. There will be a lot of concerns related to health. Will something happen to me, will something happen to my family members? Even small things like booking an appointment would cause a lot of anxiety. Every activity the person does is with a lot of worry. So the person usually thinks about what is going to happen, what will happen. That's the common theme that we would, if the person is worried about the outcomes of certain activities. If you ask the person to do some activity, the person would be worrying about what would happen. So for generalized anxiety disorder, there is a screening tool which is called GAD-7. It has 7 items. That's why it's called GAD-7. So they have 7 questions related to symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. So the person is asked about, in last 2 weeks, have you felt nervous, have you felt anxious? So the person tells, okay, every time, every day, or no, depending on the frequency. uh, has the person not been able to control this worry? That is something that is the second question. So unable to control the worry, constantly worrying, worrying too much, unable to relax, being restless, uh, being easily annoyed or irritable, and feeling afraid that something bad will happen. So these are the 7 questions, and it's a very simple tool that can be administered in 2 to 3 minutes. Uh, so the score for these um, is no with 0 to 4, it's minimal anxiety, or the severity is minimal. 5 to 9, having a score of 5 to 9 means mild anxiety. 10 to 14 is moderate, and 15 to 21 is severe anxiety. So GAD 7 is for generalized anxiety disorder under anxiety disorders. So for depression, what we have done is PHQ 9, patient health questionnaire 9, which is again 9 questions. And under anxiety disorders, there are various types of disorders. There is panic disorder, there is post-traumatic stress disorder, and other conditions, for example, like acute stress reaction and adjustment disorders. So panic disorder uh, is when a person experiences frequent panic attacks, which is like having physiological and psychological distress. So the person who is going through panic disorder or panic attack will have palpitations or increased heart rate. The person sweats easily and feels shaky, and there might be feeling that person has uh, pain in the chest, and the person feels difficulty to breathe. All the symptoms that might the person might misinterpret as having a heart attack, or a physical condition, and he might think that I have to go to the emergency, there is a need for urgency now, I need medical attention. But when it happens maybe the first time the person doesn't know, but if it happens recurrently, uh, like panic disorder is something that needs to be considered. And most of the time patients with, or a person individual with panic disorder, go to cardiac OPD to, or cardiac emergency to check his ECG and all those things, to make sure that he's he's okay, or there is no distress. So this is something that we can see in people with the panic disorder. So the major thing is fear of dying, or fear of losing control about, okay, I can't control this anxiety, I can't control this breathlessness, if I don't control, something is going to happen. So all these are thought patterns that you could see. So we could some of the signs that we could see in people with panic disorder is that they keep on having, constantly checking their vitals, blood pressure, or temperature, or SpO2 level, everything, to make sure that the person is fine, there is no any danger. So constantly doing that, constantly checking for any signs of physical distress uh, could be one of the signs of panic disorder. Then there is post traumatic stress disorder, which is an severe condition in person who has witnessed something distressing. The person might have witnessed, for example, might have witnessed an anxiety, might have witnessed sorry person might have witnessed an accident, or have gone through an accident, or severe accident. Person might have had um, uh, some distressing event, for example, a violent episode, somebody has had done something violent, um, uh, or rape, all these stressful things. Once the person goes through it, the person even after the incident that has happened, starts reliving, having distressing moments about this incident that has already happened, probably through images, probably, the person has flashbacks of these events again and again. So if if a person has experienced a traumatic incident, and then if these symptoms last for more than 30 days, then we call it as a post-traumatic stress disorder. Otherwise, if the person has had a traumatic incident, has witnessed certain traumatic things, but has this reaction within 1 month, then we call it as acute stress reaction. Then there is adjustment disorder. Adjustment disorder is basically give me a second. Adjustment disorder is basically that when there is a change in one person's life, the person has difficulty dealing with it. For example, the person is not able to, if there is a change, certain like loss, or there is somebody new that has come to family, like a new person is born. So when that happens, the person is not able to adjust to that situation. The person has symptoms similar to the person has abnormal reactions. The person might have anxiety, mainly because of that incident that has happened or the event that has changed. So this is something that we could see in adjustment disorders. And next is OCD. OCD is a disorder which many of us would have heard about it, or we casually throw these words called OCD, in family and friends. When the person is excessively clean, or the uh, person is very systematic, then we tell, oh, the person has OCD. But the person might have OCD or obsessive compulsive traits, but it is disorder when the person has recurring unwanted thoughts. For example, related to contamination, that everything is dirty, and that people and environment is all dirty, and I might contract, or I might get infected by it, or I might get uh, affected by it. You feel all those things. Or you have some thoughts related to sexual content. You get images of disturbing sexual thoughts which you don't like, but it keeps on coming. You can't control it, and that is the one that causes you distress. Or there are sometimes people who have fear of blurting out that something, telling something obscene, or thinking, fearing that I will tell something bad, I'll back answer and I'll tell something bad. So these are the thoughts that person would usually get. Or extreme concern with order and symmetry. Everything has to be in certain order. When that doesn't happen, there is extreme sense of distress, or discomfort that the person experiences. And also there is recurrent intrusive thoughts related to some numbers the person hears, or uh, or the sounds a person hears, or the number that comes to mind. For example, some numbers, like in the count of 1 2 3, the person gets these thoughts about numbers repeatedly. Or again, something related to hoarding, like keeping all the things, not discarding anything, keeping everything, even small bills and small articrafts, anything, keep everything is hoarded, fearing that if I throw it, something will happen. Everything is very important, and I have to hoard everything. And you can see that in extreme cases, people would have hoarded a lot of waste and unnecessary stuffs in their rooms for more than more than 10 years. They have hoarded things, and they are not able to discard it, feeling that there would be something important, and I should not lose it. And then uh, and the next important aspect is compulsions. The first one, all these fears, all these thoughts, all this need for symmetry and precision is all part of obsession. What is compulsion? Compulsion is basically excessive or ritualized hand washing with association to obsessions. Like, you get thoughts related to contamination. So, you keep on washing your hands, that, oh, I would have touched something, I would contract an illness, or I would get infected with some infection. So now I have to wash. So, the person keeps on washing hands. So, and you know that obsessions are repetitive. So, when every time the thought comes, the person washes. Or repeated cleaning of household objects, like, keep on cleaning the stuff, keep on dusting, to an extent that, sometimes the person also washes mobile phone, or washes the currency, the notes, currency notes that we have. So, they wash that, thinking that, something would have some virus would have touched it, or, some contamination has happened to those objects, without understanding, like, there is no logic, and they know that there is no logic to it, but still, they can't resist doing it, because, there is so much distress related to uh, uh, so much distress related to the thoughts. So, and there is a need for, like, when the person thinks that everything has to be in order, so, keep on ordering, keep on arranging things in symmetry. So these things are usually seen repeatedly checking. There is always doubts related to whether I have locked the door, whether I have like switched off the gas gas line. So what happens is that, when this happens, the person feels that, something bad will happen, and, he gets fear, and then, he keeps on checking these locks, uh, counting constantly, and, always seeking reassurances from others, that have I locked the door, have I done this. The family members have to tell, yes you have, yes you have. So, that also becomes like a compulsion. So we have Y-box checklist, uh, 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 which is a commonly used checklist in understanding what are the different types of obsessions and compulsions that you have. This is freely available. You can go through each of the items. So you look for items which you look for certain obsessions which were there in the past, and also which are currently existent. Some of the time person will tell, oh, I had checking behavior long before, but now I don't have it. Now there is no fear of contamination. So, you have different types of obsessions. Based on that, you list it, whether this is there now or which is there in the past. So, a person with the obsessive compulsive disorder would need psychiatric help, and, the person would need psychotherapy to help the person overcome it. The other important aspect that we are talking is changes in sleep, that we are commonly discussing. So sleep disorders are conditions that result in changes in the way that you sleep. So, some of the things that you can observe easily is that the person sleeps excessively during the daytime. There is the person is not able to initiate sleep in the night, or, person wakes in the night and can't sleep, or the person wakes up early and then, he can't fall asleep. So different time duration, it's called uh, different durations when the person is not able to sleep. So it's called insomnia, in which the person have difficulty falling asleep. Then there are concepts of in sleep where, the person has nightmares or night terrors. Nightmares are when the person has uh, uh, extremely difficult dreams, which wakes up the person, and, the person wakes up in complete fearfulness. And uh, uh, and there are night terrors, uh, which is related to uh, episodes of screaming and intense fear, and the person has uh, 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 often, swaying effect during whilst still asleep. So the person has episodes of screaming and intense fear during the sleep time. So there is a Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, which actually assesses the quality of your sleep. which can be used commonly. So this is something that you could use to uh, assess the person's sleep quality. So this is the questions are related to, when do you sleep, like, after how long after you go to bed that you get sleep, like, is there any issues related to, for example, in between, do you get up, do you have like, do you snore loudly, do you feel coldness in your feet? All these questions are there, and uh, these can be uh, scored on a scale of 1 to 3, and there is different methods of scoring it. I won't go to the details of it, which can be, I will send the scoring methodology in detail.
Deep, can you speed up because time is running out?
Yes, yes,
You
sir.
have, of course, told us the anxiety, depression, sleep, which are all much more common problems. You
Yes,
might talk about suicide and then wind up. Okay.
yes, sir. So the next one is definitely, like sir told, I'm talking about suicide warning signs. Like, uh, so some of the things that we could easily observe when, uh, or warning signs that we can take from person who has suicidal thoughts is that the person talks about suicide, the person talks about dying, person talks about not being want to be there, want to live forever. All this talking about suicide can be one of the major warning signs of suicide. The person withdraws or wanting to be always alone. The person is preoccupied with death and dying, talks about death and dying, and looks at Google and all those browsing sites to look at, death, about dying and all those things. The person usually has depressive symptoms, like I always, like I told you in the initial part, where there is helplessness and hopelessness, that nobody is there to help me in this situation, or, nothing good is going to happen. Usually, we also see that there is an increased intake of alcohol or substance in persons with suicidal ideas or suicidal thoughts. There is changes in eating and sleeping behavior. The person also uh, sometimes does this by writing will or giving away his or her belongings to people without any logic. Like, he would give his valuable like jewelry or, valuable belonging to someone, just telling that, you keep it with you, it's for you. So all these behaviors are some of the warning signs uh, for suicide. And telling goodbyes to someone, texting that, you've been a good friend, thank you for being in my life. All these words, all these goodbyes, that messages that you tell, or, you blurt out, these are all warning signs in people with having suicidal thoughts. And they tell that, research also tell that the people who are suicidal have are very anxious, or, they develop certain personality changes. For example, being isolated, being withdrawn, and, doesn't talk much, or, the person makes a uh, trip to his or her trip to his or her like, village deity or village temple, and person suddenly becomes very religious, or the person becomes very non-religious also sometimes. All these are signs of uh, suicide. So, you have to be observant about this. So there is a scale called SADS person scale, which is also freely available. So this scale actually measures the risk for a person having a, uh, suicidal risk. For example, if the person is male, then, give a score of SAD is an acronym for different demographics of the person. One is the definitely the gender. So you give a score of 1 if the person is male, and 0 if it's a female, because most of the males who attempt in life, they all succeed most of the time. So that is one, you give a score of 1. You give a score of 1 if the person is below, I mean, between the age of 20 and 44. You give a score if depression is present. So you could use patient health questionnaire in this process. For example, there is sad mood, there is a lack of interest. All these can be the signs of depression. There is if there is a history of self harm, like the person has in previous time has done or attempted his life, then you give a score of 1. If the person uses substances, or if the person is abusing substances, then you again give a score of 1. The person is not thinking properly, tells that there is nobody to help, the world is not a good place to live, all this irrational thinking, then you score 1. If the person lacks social support, there is lack of friends, there is nobody to help him, or there is no job, all these things means there is lack of social support, then you again give a score of 1. If the person has told that oh, I have bought some poison, or I've brought something, knife, to and tells about the plan, then you again score 1. And if the person is alone, person is single, then again you give a score of 1. For example, the person is divorced, or widowed, or is there is nobody, no social support, then again you give a score of 1. And if the person is sick, for example, has a chronic physical health condition, or a severe physical health condition, then again the chances or the risk factor is more. So that is and if you get a score of 0 to 4, then you tell that the person might have a very low suicidal risk. But if the score is 5 to 6, then it is medium, and the score of 7 to 10 means very high risk, and the person might need immediate probably admission to the hospital with IP care. So that's about suicide. So I would take a break here, sir, and then we can.
Yeah. Uh, Thank you, Sudeep.
Yes,
It's
sir.
been very useful talking about anxiety, depression, suicide, panic, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. Uh, there have been one or two questions. My suggestion is that still, since we had announced that we would end the program at 5:30, we would request you to, after the two questions, people have raised their hands. We will allow them to ask the question. After we respond to that, then we will move on to, because you have given a panorama of various kinds of problems, how to identify them. My suggestion would be that we go to the next speaker, and, who will talk about uh, prevention and more details about risk assessment. Okay, Vinay, can I request you to let the two people who wanted to ask questions? But there is no response. I
Yes,
find that Dr. Sattar, who
yes,
is the head of the Department of Psychiatry at Vaidehi Institute of Medical Sciences, has raised the hands. If he's still around, please unmute him. Let him ask the question.
I think I have unmuted myself. It is
Yeah.
a very interesting webinar, and very relevant and very timely this thing organized, and very eminent speakers are there, and it was very nice thing to hear from a university and the college, and very appreciating. Uh, Probably the way to look at is that this type of thing should happen in other universities and other medical colleges. Is basically that I raise the hand to appreciate the initiative taken, and nice to hear you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sattar. It is coming from somebody who is head of a big department. The Vaidehi Institute, one of your colleagues is going to be speaking next, has been invaluable for the organizers. Of course, they will convey this to, various people. I am so delighted that the effort taken by all the speakers in preparing elaborate presentations, etc., is appreciated by you. Thank you very much. Now, many people have asked on the chat box and question and answer box whether the PowerPoints would be available to them. For example, I'm now going to limit Sudeep's presentation, but I have gone through his slides. There is the second section which talks about psychosis, substance use problem, which is mentioned, but for lack of time, I'm requesting Sudeep to now close, because I believe, and also there is evidence that the high prevalence problems because of COVID are anxiety, depression, panic, the acute stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, etc. And very rarely do people have psychiatric. We might get reports later on about psychosis. So I would now thank you very much, Sudeep, for an elaborate presentation. You have given very extensively how to interpret the, instruments such as the PHQ-9 and GAD. Anybody in the audience who are all health sector students at various levels, we can examine these and make use of them. There was a question from somebody, on the chat box. It has been answered for want of time. The question was, there is a person who is depressed because somebody very close to him passed away. And this person says there are many other people in the community who are like that. But they are refusing to go and see the psychiatrist. This is a problem. This is the stigma of the psychiatry. In the next 3 presentations, some of these would be answered. So I would now thank Sudeep for an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. The organizers will, of course, make it a point to make the PowerPoints of all the speakers available.